$100 billion, sold for $10 billion. A decade ago, Walgreens was worth about $100 billion. It sat in the Dow. It had paid a dividend every year for 91 years. Last August, it sold for around 10. By then, it had already been thrown out of the Dow, and it had already stopped paying the dividend. Remember that. It matters later. And 83% of the money used to buy it was borrowed, not by the buyer, by Walgreens. In a leveraged buyout, the debt does not sit with the firm that bought you. It sits on you. So Walgreens now owes the money that was used to purchase Walgreens. That interest is not abstract. It comes out of a till in a shop on a street. On the 4th of June, the Walgreens at 8628 South Cottage Grove Avenue closed. Chatham, on the south side of Chicago. Nobody sent a letter. The notice went up on the glass on a sheet of printer paper. The alderman for that ward is William Hall. His words: Walgreens should be charged with first-degree corporate abandonment. It should be a crime the way they're treating our elders and our families. First-degree corporate abandonment. That is an elected official reaching for the language of criminal law to describe a shop shutting its doors. So either he is being theatrical, or a pharmacy is not a shop. Nobody drives across town for a birthday card. You go because of the raised counter at the back, and the person standing behind it who knows what you take and what it must never be mixed with. Insulin, blood pressure tablets, the antibiotic your child needs tonight and not on Thursday. That counter is the last piece of medicine most people can reach on foot. Latonya Mitchell runs a business a few doors from that glass. Her words: they're leaving this community destitute. It's drying up, and it's another desert. 2,000 miles away, in Granite Falls, Washington, Dennis Carlson drove to collect a prescription and found the door locked. I didn't even know they were closing. 3 people 2,000 miles apart describing the same thing. That is not a feeling. Somebody counted. In 2026, researchers at the Ohio State Comprehensive Cancer Center published a study in JAMA Network Open. Nearly half of all counties in the United States now have no pharmacy within 10 miles. Roughly 30% of American pharmacies closed between 2010 and 2021. Granite Falls is not unusual. Granite Falls is the pattern. This is the ground the rest of the story is built on. When a pharmacy closes, older people in that area take their heart medication less reliably. That is measurable, and it has been measured. They do not decide to stop. The counter moved, and the tablets stopped arriving. People over 65 take somewhere between a quarter and a third of every prescription written in this country. They are also the people least able to drive an hour for it. In one rural county, a father now drives 25 miles for his child's insulin, then 25 miles home, 50 miles for a box that used to be 4 minutes away. So, who did this? Alderman Hall used the word abandonment. This is the machine he was describing, and it is simpler than the people who use it would like. A buyout firm puts down a slice of its own money. The rest is borrowed against the company it is buying. 83% here. The company wakes up the morning after the deal owing money it never spent, on a price it never received. That debt has to be serviced out of something. In this business, the something is stores. Latonya Mitchell watched one of them go. This buyer has been here before. 9 West, the shoe company. Before the bankruptcy, the most valuable brands were sold to entities the firm itself controlled. Creditors went to court for permission to sue, alleging the sales were below fair value while the company was already insolvent. 70 stores closed. Then Belk, the department store, a prepackaged bankruptcy that cut the debt down. The firm kept control. February 2026. 628 jobs cut, 469 of them at the corporate campus in Deerfield, Illinois. 159 more at a warehouse in Houston. Headcount went from 220,000 to 211,000, and paid holidays for hourly workers were eliminated, not reduced, eliminated. In April 2025, Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote and asked directly, what happens to the debt? What happens to the property? What happens to the people? Be careful here, because this is where most coverage of this story goes wrong. She raised the pensions and the real estate as worries, not as findings. Nothing has been established. We looked for the answer. We could not find one. And the fees a buyout firm charges the company it owns for the privilege of being owned are not disclosed here either. So we are not going to invent a number for you. That is the case for the prosecution. Now the part it would rather you skipped. $11.7 billion of losses across fiscal 2023 and 2024. Among the worst of any Fortune 500 company in those 2 years. Nobody bought this company and then broke it. It arrived broken. And it had already spent itself into a corner, unassisted. Village MD, $1 billion in 2020, $5.2 billion more the year after, $9 billion for City MD. It ended in an impairment of $5.8 billion. No buyout firm was in the room for that. It was a bet on becoming a healthcare company made by people who ran a pharmacy chain. And it was not only their bet. Cigna held a stake in the same business and wrote off $1.8 billion of its own, none of which reaches Dennis Carlson's locked door in Granite Falls. It is still true. And the margin was gone long before anyone signed anything. Gross margin on American retail pharmacy, 28.2% in 2014, 17.9% in 2024. Some prescriptions are now handed over the counter at a loss, and the family-owned pharmacy across the road is dying of exactly the same thing. 96.5% of independents say the reimbursement they get from pharmacy benefit managers threatens their survival. No buyout firm owns them. And now the fact that should trouble anyone who came here certain. The plan to close 1,200 stores was announced by Walgreens in 2024, while it was still a public company. Before this, buyer existed as a buyer. The 91-year dividend, suspended in January 2025, also before the sale. Both of the things everybody blames the new owner for were decided by the old one. Dennis Carlson's door was going to be locked either way. So what exactly is the charge?
So here is the question this whole case comes down to. Is Sycamore guilty of killing a healthy neighborhood institution, or is it just the last owner standing when the music stopped? I have gone back and forth on this, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. The honest answer is not clean. The decline was real, and most of it was self-inflicted.
Alderman Hall wanted a criminal charge. He does not get one, not guilty of murder. The patient was ill when it arrived, and it had made itself ill. $11.7 billion in losses, a $9 billion bet on clinics, a margin that halved while nobody was looking. What is actually on trial is narrower and worse. Whether loading 83% debt onto a company that is already bleeding turns a managed shrinkage into an abandonment. A planned closure gives a neighborhood a date. A debt schedule gives it a deadline. Those are not the same thing, and Chatham found out which one it got from a sheet of printer paper. Hundreds more stores will close, and the pace is disputed. Some counts say under 100 this year. Others say around 350, which is more than 3 times as many, and neither side will show it's working. Nobody outside the building knows. And that, on its own, is the answer to Alderman Hall. He called it abandonment because nobody would tell him when.
I don't think the buyer is guilty of causing the disease, because the closures and dividend cuts started before it arrived. but taking an already bleeding essential service company and loading the purchase onto its own balance sheet looks like knowingly narrowing the margin between managed retreat and abandonment. Whether a court can punish that depends on proof of fraud, self-dealing, or breach of duty, not just ugliness. As a matter of public policy, no, a neighborhood pharmacy network should not be financeable at 83% debt without hard safeguards for access, workers, and patients.
The buyer didn't cause the illness, but applying 83% leverage to a patient this fragile seems to intentionally sacrifice any chance of recovery for short-term gain. While the store closures began earlier, this financial structure ensures debt service will always win against the needs of the company and the communities it serves. Financing an essential service this way creates a fundamental, and I think dangerous, conflict between the public's health and the buyer's profit.
I want to convict the buyer, and I have to keep talking myself out of it. Every closure in this episode was already scheduled by the people who ran the company before. What changed is who sets the calendar and how much of it they are obliged to explain. Dennis Carlson was owed a date. Nothing in this structure required anyone to give him one. An essential service financed at 83% debt does not stop being essential. It just stops being answerable.
Latonya Mitchell called it a desert. Dennis Carlson found out by pulling on a locked door. Neither of them was arguing about capital structure. They were asking a much smaller question, which is whether anyone owed them a warning before the door was locked. So here is the lesson you can steal. When something you depend on changes hands, do not ask what it sold for. Ask how much of the price it now owes and who that debt answers to. Because a business that owes the price of itself has already decided what it will do next. It just has not told you the date. Think my verdict is wrong? Tell me where in the comments. Court adjourned?